Okay guys, today we got a project with this 2006 Dodge Magnum. We're going to be recharging the air conditioning. It was in an accident with an animal where it bent the air conditioning condenser and radiator. So I put a new one in. You can see that right through this panel here. So it needs a total recharge because the charge went out when the animal was hit and the air conditioning condenser was bent. So what all you're going to need if you're doing a charge from dead empty, you're going to need some gauges like this for 134A refrigerant. You'll need your refrigerant. You can use a large container like this, or you can get those small 1-pound containers. I'm using a scale because I have the big container, that way I can weigh out my charge. You'll need a vacuum pump. You'll need, if you replace anything like if you put a new condenser like I did, or if you replace the compressor, you'll need some oil, some compressor oil. And for this car, it uses, I think the whole system is about 5 or 5.5 ounces of oil. And if you're just going to replace the condenser, about an ounce and a half of oil. That's all you have to add. And okay, so some other things you'll need if you're going to add your oil is a tool like this. And what this is, you put your oil inside here, and then you turn this side of it, and it pushes the oil up and into the system. And this one in particular has a connector that you can push oil into a 410A connector on this end, which is house type refrigerant for like a heat pump. So what I needed was a adapter to 134A coupler, so I can push the oil in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put you'll have to see the type of oil your system takes, but with this Dodge, it's the PAG 46. So that's everything you're going to need to put a new charge in your system. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do once you got all your equipment set is to vacuum out the system, and you're going to need a vacuum pump just like this. And this particular vacuum pump, I needed an adapter that I had to screw on right here to this fitting, because this was set up for 410A and R12. So this is a 134A adapter that you can buy. Here's the type of adapter I bought. Make sure all your fittings are tight. Come up here, make sure your manifold gauges are all shut, and these pressure valves can be shut too. The way they shut, you screw them the opposite way. I'll show you on the low side hose here. So with these gauges, with this gauge set, you turn counterclockwise. That actually turns the valve off. So there's a little presser in the middle there, and as you turn it clockwise, it presses down. So when you disconnect or connect to your system, make sure these pressers are counterclockwise, and that's the off position. Then you can just push on a little coupler and snap it on. With this Dodge, both of the high side and the low side fittings are right here on the driver's side. This is the high side one. It's bigger. They both have caps on them. And you can see this is the cap for the high side and low side. And that fitting is quite a bit bigger. It's a little awkward, but the low side is right there. So you can't really get them mixed up. There's no way to get them mixed up. you'll definitely won't be able to fit the low side hose on the high side and vice versa. So get that connected up to the low side. Okay, the next thing you're going to do, make sure you take your exhaust port off, cover off of your vacuum pump. Turn it on. And you can come over here and open the blue valve on the low side. You see it pull the vacuum down. This one, the vacuum is in the middle on the black scale there. So you can see it's pulling down about 30 inches of vacuum. So you want to let it pull the vacuum on your system for about a half an hour, 20 minutes to a half an hour. And then we'll come back and we'll check it for leaks. Okay, it's been about 25 minutes and it's still pulling a hard vacuum. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn my vacuum pump off, and I'm just going to wait about another 20 minutes or so, and we'll make sure there's no leaks in the system, make sure that that vacuum is still pulled down tight. In 20 minutes, come back. Alright, it's been about 20 minutes. I'm going to check the gauge, and it looks like it held the vacuum good. It's still on 30. So what I'm going to do next, I still have the compressor turned in on that one, so there's vacuum coming through this hose here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this hose off, turn this knob off on the blue side here, so it holds some of the vacuum. We're going to disconnect from our vacuum pump. And I'm going to hook up to the tank. Okay, so now we're going to hook up to our tank, the yellow line. And I'm going to turn my scale on. Put my container, so if you have it upside down like this, it's going to dispense liquid refrigerant. If you have it the other way, it'll dispense vapor. So what I'm doing, I have it upside down to dispense the liquid, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to meter the liquid with this valve right here. So if you just crack this open slightly, it'll somewhat vaporize the liquid, and it'll come through the blue hose and charge the system. Okay, so now I've got my valve open. I'm going to take a look at my weight. And so the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to bleed a little bit of air out of here. Just crack this a tiny bit. Okay, just bleed that air out. Might want to put some gloves on when you do that, in case you get more than you bargained for. So, and then I want to open up this valve here. See the gauge going up. And what's going to happen, it's going to take and equalize the pressure that's in the bottle into the system. So it'll give it a little bit of a charge. Okay, so now it's done equalizing the charge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook up the high side. I'm going to keep this valve closed, this valve open, and the pressure on there, we're going to keep it turned out so it doesn't release any of that refrigerant. when we put the high side connector on. So the high side's right here. Take that off. And wear some safety glasses when you're working with refrigerant like this, just in case something happens. Okay, I got the compressor all the way out. I'm going to connect up. Okay, it's snapped on. I'm going to make sure that valve is closed. I'm going to turn my pressure in, and you'll see the high side gauge is up now. We're still going to leave this closed, this one open. I'm going to start our engine and turn the air conditioning on. Okay, before you start your engine, make sure these two valves are closed. And connect up your high side, and then turn your pressure foot in for that so it gets a reading. Start up your engine and put it on air conditioning on high blower, max air. Okay, and then we're going to look, see how much has gone into the system. So far, a little over 1 pound has gone into the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more to the system. You'll see the gauge move when I do this. Just kind of feather it in a little bit. Don't crank it open, wide open. You don't want to add liquid real fast to the low side here, because that's a vapor side. Okay, here's a pressure chart you can find online for 134A. Get your ambient temperature. Right now it's about 90 degrees here. And then you want to look at your low side pressure, just 45 to 55. Right now my compressor's cycling on and off. It has a charge in it, but it's not quite full enough when it does that. And then it wants 90, 250 to 270 on the high side. So we're going to look at our gauges up here. When it cycles on, see the inside gauge there? The black one. Watch the pressure. So while it's running about 225 or so. We want a little bit more refrigerant in there. So we're going to let a little bit more in. Do it easy. You can see it in the sight glass. When I open it up, you'll see a little spurt of refrigerant go in. Okay, now my compressor's not cycling on and off anymore. It's staying on steady. You can hear it because the high cooling fan is running. Okay, so it sounds like it needs a little bit more yet. Watch that sight glass there. Good, I'm going to crack it open a little bit. A little bit more goes in. We'll let it run for a little bit yet. When it gets to be about 250, 270 while it's running, then we got enough refrigerant. Right now it's getting close to 250. It's just under 250. I'll give it just a little more. Let it run for a little bit. And you can see it's gone up a slight amount. The low side pressure is about 53 right now. 52, 53. I'm going to give it a little more. pressure has jumped up a little bit more. Up and up and up. Okay, right now it's towards the high end of where I want it. Well, it's dropped down a little bit to 250. We're going to let it settle in a little bit, but if it goes just above 250, that's where I want it. I'm going to let it settle for a while, let it run for a minute or two, and settle in. Make sure this is turned off. I think I'm just about there, so I'm going to turn my gas off on my big tank here. Tripod set up here. I think I'm just about there. Just gonna go ahead and turn the gas off. This goes in. Let's see, it's holding right around 250, 275. It's about right where I want it. It's not cycling on and off real short anymore. It's holding pretty good. I might give it just a little bit more refrigerant. No, I think I'm going to hold it there because as it cycles a little bit, it's swaying between 250 and 275. I think we'll just hold it right there. That's about right where I want the charge to be. So close all your valves up. Close up your compressors. These valves by turning them counterclockwise. That'll release the pressure off of the valve. Do the same with the other two ones. I can't do it right now because it's really hot. So we're going to go inside the car and just check it, see how cold it is coming out. Turn it to blowing out the top here. And we definitely got some air conditioning. It's nice and cold. Set all the way to the max coldness and recirculate on. We'll make it even colder. And the next thing I'm going to want to do is to add the oil before I run it too much longer, because when I replace the air conditioning condenser, there was a little bit of oil left in there, so what we want to do is we add a little bit of oil to make up for that. So I'm going to shut it off now and get ready to add that oil. Okay, as I showed earlier, I replaced the condenser in this car. So I've got the proper oil and I've got something to fill it with. This is a tool you can use to fill. It has marks on here, graduated marks. How much, depending on how much oil you're going to need to add to the system. I'm going to add 1 ounce, which is right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this bottom piece so it lines up with the 1 ounce mark on there. And all it is there's a piston inside here. See when I get this open. Cylinder with a piston inside. So I'll move it up to the 1 ounce mark here. I think that's about the minimum if you change a condenser that has the dryer built into it. So I'm going to add that amount of oil to it, make sure that's cleaned out good since your last use. And you want to make sure you have fresh oil, because this oil will absorb moisture. You don't want moisture in your system. So I'll put that in there. This has a UV dye in it. Okay. And you fill to the threads on there. You don't fill it all the way to the top because this piston, this cap here has a threaded part and it'll hit the oil. Okay. So screw the cap back on. And I've got an adapter for this. This is set up for 410A, like a heat pump connector. So what I have is an adapter. Comes with this fitting here to adapt to 134A. And I've got a quick coupler which has the pressure foots inside them. I'm going to back that pressure foot out. I'm going to connect it up to my injection, my oil injector. I'm going to tighten all these fittings up. And there we go. We're all ready to inject our oil into the system. Alright, I got it all connected up and the pressure turned on. So all I got to do here is turn this until all the oil goes into the system. Okay guys, that's it from start to finish. How to recharge your system after replacing a part, be it a hose, compressor, condenser like I did, or whatever part you had replaced. And don't forget your oil charge. There's places you can go to look up the proper oil that you need for your system, and also the proper amount of oil to inject based on the part that was replaced. Be careful when you're all finished and you have your lines disconnected. There's going to be a little refrigerant still in this yellow line because you're running liquid through here. So be careful when you disconnect that. Have some gloves on, some eyeglass, some safety glasses on when you do this. Alright guys, that's it. Take care.